Rebecca Miller is here. She has been an actress, a painter, a sculptor, a director, and a short story writer. She is also a novelist, and her new book is called Jacob's Folly. It tells the story of an 18th century Parisian Jewish merchant who has been reincarnated as a housefly in modern-day New York. The Los Angeles Times calls it delightful, bawdy, detailed, and complicated. I'm pleased to have Rebecca Miller back at this table. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's just go right to the book. So here is Jacob. He's a peddler in Paris in the 18th century. And he's reincarnated as a fly. Where did this idea come from?
Well, you know, the book is constructed like a three-stranded challah bread.
Yes.
So it's braided.
Yes.
And I started with one character, which was actually Leslie Senza Timore, who's a fireman.
Right.
Volunteer fireman, and he was having a pee on his front lawn at the cusp of dawn, and that was my first image.
That was your first visual image.
Yes, and I started with an image.
Right.
And then I had an intuition that there was another dimension creature, some spiritual entity looking down on him and somehow laughing at him. I didn't know more than that yet. Then I had Masha.
Right.
And when I realized Masha was a Jew...
Edelman.
Masha Edelman. And once I realized that she was an Orthodox Jew,
right.
At first I thought she was going to be a Hasidic Jew, and then I realized that I didn't want the whole family speaking Yiddish because I thought that would be too hard for me to penetrate.
Yeah.
I started doing a lot of research on Judaism, both contemporary and the history of Judaism, etc. And I came across a small article about a woman who lives in Canada who had 10 children, and she write a little article about how her daughter was followed around by a fly all day, and she said maybe it was a soul doing penance for his sins, says the woman in the article. And I thought, is there reincarnation in Judaism? Yeah. And then I discovered Gilgul, which is the reincarnation of Jewish souls. And I had my third my point of the triangle, which was
Okay, so
Jacob.
this began with a picture in your mind of a guy who's taking a pee.
Yeah.
And it ends up as what?
It ends up as the interweaving of these destinies of these three characters. And in fact, they're all affecting each other, even though a large part of the narrative takes place in 18th century Paris, in the tiny, tiny Jewish community in Paris at that time. And Jacob is a Jewish peddler. At the age of 16, we meet him, and he's carrying his wares in what they called a Jew's box.
Why did you want to set it there?
I was already very curious about that period. I had read quite a lot about the Marquis de Sade, and originally I wanted Jacob to be the valet of the Marquis de Sade, but then I thought that was just going down a rabbit hole that I didn't want to go down. But I thought maybe he could be the valet of a neighbor of the Marquis de Sade, or somebody he might have known. Yeah. And so, because that world was, I thought it would be interesting to have those two worlds intersect. I also became fascinated by the history of anti-Semitism in France, and both the fact that they were the first country really to make Jews citizens, but on the other hand, the tradition of anti-Semitism, and then how it branched out into, overarched into the 40s. And there were all sorts of things that made France a really interesting place to set this.
And when Jacob the Fly comes to modern-day America, what does he find in the relationship between Leslie and Masha?
Well, when he meets Leslie, he's made very uncomfortable by him because he's such a good man.
Yeah, he says that.
Yeah, and a good man really, really puts Jacob off and reminds him of his father, who was a very good man and very disapproving of him. And Jacob is a bit of a rake by nature. Yes. And it's his instinct to bring a good man down. And when he sees Masha the first time, he thinks to himself, maybe I could use her to bring him down. And gradually he realizes that one of the powers he has is this reincarnated, well, first he thinks he's an angel and then realizes he's a fly. This creature, this demon, is that he can speak inside of certain people's heads. And these two characters, he can get right inside of them. And he begins to kind of affect their narrative, or so he thinks that he's affecting the narrative. To what degree he's really doing it, and to what degree something else is doing it, is one of the questions.
And Jacob is your narrator?
Yes. He's my narrator.
And the role of the narrator here?
Well, he is...
You need a narrator. Go ahead. He sees everything.
He sees everything to a degree. He has his powers are various. Sometimes he can see deeply into a character to their past, and some characters who are the ancillary characters actually deflect him. And actually, his problems are the problems of the writer, because a writer can't see into every character. Certain characters resist the writer, and in fact, in a way, Jacob is also the writer.
But certain characters resist the writer?
Yes.
Meaning that they're hard for the writer to
penetrate.
I think
some characters come very naturally when you're writing. Other characters you have to work really hard, and others will never let you fully in. Jacob came like water through my body. He came very quickly. His voice was in my body quickly. I was able to write him. And Leslie, I had to kind of look at from different angles, many different angles, until I began to see his inevitability of his fate. And
when you think about what Jacob does, did you have to go and do a whole lot of research about reincarnation?
Well, Gilgul in specific,
Yeah.
yes, I did. And but I had this project was very dominated by research. I mean, it took 5 years, and out of those years, I would say maybe 3 of them, although it was all interspersed with writing, would have been spent just reading. My learning curve for this was so steep. Never since I went to college.
In the midst of writing this, do you consult with Daniel Day-Lewis?
Not in the midst, no. I mean, when I was done...
16-year husband, I think it is.
Yes, almost 17. When it was done, but still had room to change, I showed it to him. And he's one of my main readers. There are 3 people or 4 people that I have read it. And
who are they?
Jonathan Galassi, my editor.
Oh, sure, right.
And Daniel, and Barbara Browning, who's a novelist and my best friend.
Yeah. And what do they tell you as you're writing this novel? You showed it to them chapter by chapter?
No, I gave for Daniel came almost at the end, but not so far at the end that I couldn't keep changing.
You wouldn't talk to him about it at dinner?
Yes, we did talk about it.
You would say,
and
Mr.
I would
Lincoln,
say,
can I tell you about my novel?
Well, no, I would say, oh my God, I realize he's a fly, or that kind of thing. Yes, and he would. But it was
great. He would
great.
encourage you. He said, "What a good idea."
Well, he was probably thinking I was completely insane. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Did he at some point say,
"Sweetheart,
are you nuts, darling? You're the mother of my children, for God's sakes."
No, I think he could tell that there was a kind of logic emerging. You know?
It had rationality already, huh?
Yeah, I think that he could see some kind of logic emerging, and he could see that I was excited about it. So he went with it.
Yeah. And do they change them? Did they change your mind about the relationship between the characters? Do they help you understand it by their comments? These readers.
Well, somewhat. I think I had to do most of that myself. I mean, most of the dark work of writing is alone and has to be alone, finally. But one thing that Jonathan Galassi was hugely helpful with was the structure, which actually took a year to just do structure, just to get the structure.
What does
right.
structure mean?
Well, because this is the braid, that means that you have to figure out where to break and where to break it into another storyline, and so it's sort of like breathing. You have to know when to breathe out, when to breathe in, and so the reader is not frustrated but tantalized and ready to move, but not frustrated to be there too long, nor upset that they have to leave.
Marcia wants to be an actor. Mm-hmm. Does that come from your own early desires to act?
Well, not so much my early desires, because I didn't have. She has a real vocation, but my experience in acting class, yes. And actually, I have to say that one of the few characters that's actually really based on a person is Bridget Mooney, who's Elaine Aiken, who was my teacher. Yeah.
So she is your teacher.
She was my teacher, and
let's just talk about that for a moment. About you and being an actress. Mm-hmm. How bad did you want to be?
Acting for me was always about understanding directing, honestly. I knew already that I wanted to be a director, and acting...
Even before you had your first role, or you sort of assessed yourself as an actor and then said, I like directing?
No, the way it happened was I was a painter, and I made little films of... I made little, very dreamlike films, and I needed $30,000 to make a crane that had a kinetic that moved up and down because I was trying to film a dream that I had had. But I needed quite a lot of money, and so I auditioned for a part in a movie that I was sort of discovered by Sam Cohen, who said you should be an actress, and I thought, oh, maybe I could get money for my crane, and so I got the part. And it was a weird series of accidents. And then I got that part, and I got my money for my crane, and I made my film with my two best friends hanging off it, being dipped in and out of buckets of milk. It was a very eccentric movie. And,
Yes.
and so acting was kind of a lark at first, but then I gradually realized that I could learn so much. So in a way, I didn't go to film school, but I went to school.
But here's what I want to establish. Did you make a judgment as to, did you have a real passion for acting at any time? Or was it a means to do something else because they gave you the opportunity and because you were reasonably good at it?
I wanted to be as good as I could, but I think I always knew it wasn't my best. I knew I was never going to be as great as one could be in it. I knew that I lacked something as an actress. I knew that always.
What did you think it was?
I always saw things from the point of view of the director. I couldn't not see that way.
So you thought like a director as an actor?
Yeah. And so I couldn't let go completely because I was seeing the whole thing. I mean, that's what a director does. They have to see the whole story all the time. And the actor, in a way, has to lose themselves in one point of view. And I think I somehow couldn't do that. It had to do with, I mean, I suppose kind of talent or an ability to release your conscious mind or whatever it is, which made me now value acting all the more. But partly my fascination with what acting is in part what the book is about. Actually.
This book?
Yeah. Yeah, because both Masha and Jacob at certain points are actors. He becomes an actor and she's an actress. And so the kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of the alchemy that acting is.
Well, I mean, hello, by the way, you have in your house.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the reasons that
somebody
I'm
who
so
understands a whole lot about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did, have discussed that as well, when I was trying to get to the bottom of it.
What's the conversation like?
Well, just talking about the
desire to act?
Not so much of that, but the moment of almost amnesia, forgetting when you're inside the moment of almost loss of self. And that was something
you become the character.
Yeah, the moment of loss of self. And I think that that's something that, the idea was that Masha, this Orthodox Jewish girl in this community where, she wouldn't be singing in front of people who she wouldn't be related to, for example. Right. She has a very, very beautiful voice and a talent for acting, and she has this deep, deep craving and deep talent also to expose herself in that way, that nakedness that one does, when you perform. And so she kind of has to individuate and leave her community. But that moment, I was just trying to get to the kernel of the moment of what that nakedness is like and what that absence of, that almost loss of self. And I remember talking to Daniel about it. And I think, honestly, that's probably, well, what we were talking about that, about the, I suppose it is that sense of stalking oblivion is what I ended up calling it. And it was, I don't remember the exact conversation, but it was sort of like that, stalking oblivion.
No, I mean, he's famous, and we've talked about it with him a number of times, to the point I don't think he likes talking about it that much, but how he loses himself.
Yeah.
He does lose himself more than anybody. But it's almost, it seems, essential for him to do.
Yeah.
You know more about that than anybody else, so help me here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think in his case, it's part of it's a natural part of the process. So it's kind of like it's just part of it.
And if it works for him.
If it works, then that's what happens. That there is a kind of, it isn't a true loss of self, but it is. I think you feel like you've lost. You don't remember really what happened anymore. It's as if you were absent for a period of time.
Roll tape.
When we got married 16 years ago, or since we got married 16 years ago, my wife, Rebecca, has lived with some very strange men. I mean, they were strange as individuals and probably even stranger if taken as a group. But luckily, she's the versatile one in the family, and she's been the perfect companion to all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of nice, wasn't it?
It was so sweet, so great. Yeah, what a sweet thing.
Really sweet.
Yeah.
You didn't expect it?
No. I was so confused at that moment because everything just happened so quickly, so I was sort of still 1 minute behind. I hadn't really cottoned on to what was even happening.
Do you want to direct more?
Yeah, I do. I have a screenplay that I'd like to make into a film. You know, for years now, I've been writing books, and then it so happened my curiosity wasn't slaked, and so I would make the book into a film.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Private
if
Lives of Pippa Lee.
Yes. And I'm not sure. This next one is based on a friend's unfinished novel, so it's actually not something I wrote, which is kind of liberating, actually.
Is this a movie?
You know, I don't know if I could compress it into 2 hours, is the thing. And that's where, and then, so I don't know.
Miniseries.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And I don't know if revealing it, you know, literally would be the right thing to do. I'm not sure.
See, I have a lot of admiration and for you because you've done all these things well, or reasonably well. Writing, painting, directing, acting.
Well, you know, I mean,
How do you explain that?
Well, the truth is, in a way, to talk about my acting just seems like another
Okay,
lifetime
fair
ago.
enough.
You know, but I mean, the truth is that
Not to
me,
put it at a level with these other things.
No, I
isn't
mean,
it?
like for me, I've been a storyteller for a number of years, but for a long time now, 20 years, I guess. But I've been, you know, for a long time in my earliest self, I was in my 20s, I was searching, you know, really searching, trying to find a medium that could express me in the most total way. You know, the way that I could do my best, you know, because that's the whole idea, is that you do your best. And what's the medium? And I was knocking my head against the wall, sort of like somebody looking for their favorite shirt in a drawer and like just throwing everything out, looking for that one thing. And I didn't even really know what I was looking for. Yeah. But then when I found film, I thought, okay, that's it. But yet that wasn't entirely it. And it was it, but there was also writing books ended up being the other side, the other half of the puzzle. And now I feel like I found it, and I found it for a while now. But
you've found it, which is to write books and then make them, to become a kind of consummate filmmaker by literally writing your own story and then.
Well, not necessarily always adapting the books, but for me, sometimes doing that, although that's a very long road. But writing books and making films, to me, they reflect each other. They're very different lives. Like the life of a director is very social and collaborative, and the life of a writer is really solitary.
Do you think you're better at one than the other?
I don't really know. I think that writing dominates everything that I do in a way, because even as a director, I write my stories, I write my screenplays, and then in a way I think of editing almost as a process, part of the process of writing. So it might be that writing is somehow dominant. I don't know in the end. I don't think I'll know that until I'm done, you know, and I can look back, and or somebody can look back for me or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And what about painting? Whatever happened to painting?
I think painting became filmmaking to me. That visual, you know, what I was trying to do in painting ended up becoming filmmaking. So it sort of transformed, and in a way, acting was learning about filmmaking for me. It was becoming that thing. And now I can talk to actresses or actors and really understand what they're going through, understand what they need in a way that I don't think I could have if I hadn't put my body and my mind on the line like that. You know?
And turning it around, where you show your book to Daniel and his friends, does Daniel talk to you about his performances?
Yeah, we do talk about them, but not so much. Well, you know, when he's on set, it's kind of that's not a time that I'm talking about it.
When he comes home.
Well, even then, it wouldn't really be talking. I mean, talking about it a little bit, yes, but I wouldn't be looking at anything that he's doing yet. You know, looking at footage or anything.
Okay, when he comes home for dinner, is he in character?
No.
No, he's not Lincoln when he has dinner.
No. No. When we had children, we decided that would be a little bit much.
So, but the thought was there.
Well, I think that was originally how he did it, but it just that was just too much.
I can see the kids doing this. They're all boys, aren't they?
Yeah. So you got to have just one daddy, I think.
Just one daddy. We don't need Abe as a daddy, do we? So, how about nonfiction? How about this extraordinary life you've had? How about your father? How about your mother?
How about writing about it, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I don't
your
have
mother
any
was
interest.
a photographer, wasn't she a photographer?
Yes, a great photographer.
Right.
I don't have interest in writing nonfiction, although I did, over the last years, about 5 years of my father's life, not the last years of his life, but 5 years sort of in the end part of his life, I shot a documentary.
Oh, really?
Which I've never cut together, but I have a lot of footage. I don't really know why I haven't done it. Partly I didn't want to have to review the footage. I don't know why. I I think I will put it together. I didn't even know if I was ever going to make a film out of it. I thought maybe I would just give it to one of my kids to put together, or I would give it away. Or I felt that I had to do it because I was a filmmaker and I had access to his personality in a way that nobody else would, because he tended to change his persona a lot when he was talking. He'd become much more serious, and at home he was a different person. So I do have some great footage, and I think, you know, I will know when the time is right to put it together.
We'll know.
I think so, yeah.
Can't wait. Right now we have Jacob's Folly, a novel, Rebecca Miller, the great Rebecca Miller. Much success to you. Thank you.
Thank you
Say
so
hello to
much.
Daniel.
I will.